John Fredericks Radio Network. Joining us now, well, you know him well. He's been on my show. He's all over the news. Raynard Jackson, one of the leading voices now in the African-American community defending the president and his policies, and he's with us now. Raynard, great to have you back, sir.
Hey, thank you, John, for having me, and I want to congratulate you on closing on your radio station deal yesterday, so congrats.
Thank you. I really appreciate that, Raynard, and we worked hard on it. We're continuing to grow and expand our network. Other people are selling, and they're all in a panic. We're doing the opposite because our listeners are growing and our advertisers are growing, so we're going to continue to push forward ahead. We got people on my show like Raynard Jackson, Only Good Things Can Happen. Now, you spooked my good friend Roland Martin. What's that about? You spooked him.
Yeah, John, as you probably know, I was meeting with President Trump last week, and I called him Don Lemon and Joy Reid out for them being so liberal and putting this poison of liberalism in the black community. So Roland gets his feelings hurt, John, and he issues this 5-10 minute video screed challenging me, daring me to show up and debate him on his show last Monday from 7 to 8. He's supposed to host the debate, John, and he does not show up for his own debate on his own TV show at the time he gave me. He's a wimp, and he's afraid, John.
You scared him today. You scared him half to death because you went with the challenge, and he was scheduled to be in his. He does kind of a podcast. He puts it up on the tube, and he's been very successful with that. I've had him on my show a lot. It's always an interesting perspective. But he challenged you to a debate. You agreed immediately, like, sure. They scheduled you, and then his producer, who I know you know for a very long time, emails you and says, "Oh, he can't fit you in there. It's breaking news." I mean, all right, first of all, let me tell you how this works, folks. It's a podcast, okay? It's a video YouTube podcast, which means you have no time limit, right? Exactly. He's not run live on TV. He's not run live on any radio stations. So it's a podcast. So whether it goes an hour or an hour and a half or 50 minutes or 72 minutes is irrelevant. So you just extend it for 15 minutes and have your debate. That's why it was so ridiculous. It'll be one thing if he's got, an hour TV show or an hour radio show and, he's got 5 guests. And then normally, like what I would do, I'll say, hey, I just can't get you in today. I got, so many people on, blah, blah, blah. But do Monday, do Wednesday. You give an alternative. He never gave you an alternative, and then he never got back to you.
Exactly.
And then when I asked him what the deal was, he said, he did a Facebook Live. He only had 1,000 people on it. Well, I don't care if you have 1,000 or 100,000. You did a video to challenge him to a debate. He agreed to the terms and the date immediately, and then you bailed because you're scared.
Well, we'll put it to you this way, John. You know how many followers Denzel Washington has on social media? Zero. Zero. So if that's your measuring stick, I think a lot of influential blacks from Hollywood, politics, business, and sports would not qualify to be on a podcast by Roland Martin, by that definition.
I know. All right, so so let's get to Raynard Jackson. By the way, he is president and CEO of Raynard Jackson and Associates, a government public PR firm. He's got a political consulting firm in the swamp, so he's up there with me during the week, swamping around. He has a proven record of balancing public policy with fundamental freedoms associated with a free market capitalistic society. So, look, we got a lot going on, protests, Antifa, riots, looting. In Virginia, the governor said, I'm going to make Juneteenth Day a national holiday, a state holiday. I'm for that. Statues coming down. In South Carolina yesterday, they took down in Charleston the John Calhoun statue. In Clemson University, a couple former football players led by Deshaun Watson for Clemson said they wanted to get the Calhoun name off the schools. One by one, like I can understand what's going on, but then in Portland, Oregon, they tore down Thomas Jefferson, and now they're trying to tear down Washington. Somebody on CNN said we need to really dynamite Mount Rushmore. Somebody said the other day, Quaker Oats has 3 white people on a box of oatmeal. That's got to go. Where's the censor?
Well, what I find amazing, John, is Look at what Northam did yesterday by declaring Juneteenth a state-paid holiday. Isn't it amazing that when it comes to the black community, liberals always engage with us in symbolism, and yet when it comes to the homosexual community or those in the country illegally, the Supreme Court gave them substantial legal victory. What do black folks get? Being black in a Democratic Party, John, is like pissing on yourself in a dark blue suit. It gives you a warm feeling, but no one ever notices. Mm-hmm. That's what's going on in the black community. The Democrats are not offering any substantive solutions to the murders going on in Chicago, St. Louis, my hometown, Baltimore. They're not offering any solutions on the unemployment rate in the black community. They're just giving us symbolic gestures, and this is where conservatives, John, has a great opportunity to move some of the black vote into our column.
So when you talk to the president, does he understand? Because you can't blow this off, right? Because a lot of African Americans that I talk to, they just want an accounting of what has happened here. They want, I'm not sure if it's a reconciliation, but they want recognition of the sins of the past. They don't know why Confederate statues are still standing. Like, for instance, if I'm of German descent, if I go to Berlin, I don't really feel like seeing a statue of Erwin Rommel. I mean, it's part of history. I understand it. I understand what he commanded. I understand it, but I don't really feel like seeing a statue. I don't really feel like seeing any of the statues of the World War II German generals, to be honest. A friend of mine is Italian. He goes to Italy, doesn't really feel like seeing a statue of Mussolini. That's history, but really it's counterproductive. So I can understand the feeling, but where do we get the reconciliation here, Raynard?
Well,
am I making sense at all?
You're making sense, but I slightly disagree with you, John. I don't think it's about taking statues down. But what my solution would be to these issues is, as opposed to removing statues, let's add statues. So if you want to take down Robert E. Lee in Virginia, the statue of him, why don't you put Martin Luther King next to him? So that forces a dialogue as to what each person contributed to the state of Virginia as well as America. But to try to whitewash history, John, and make it as though these people never existed, that is my issue. And taking down these statues of all the things going on in the black community, John, do you really think this is in the top 10 of urgent things that needs to happen to make this country whole and better? No. This is liberalism, John, going amok. And guess what? Here's something that's going to happen soon, John. I mark my word. If you want to take down Robert E. Lee because you disagree with his past, what happens if someone wants to remove the statue of Martin Luther King on the mall saying that he was a womanizer? What is the criteria for determining who gets a statue and who doesn't?
That's the question, right? I mean, and then it's like I said earlier, the problem is, where does this end up, and what's the objective? As an African-American male, what is the objective here with this?
To them, to the liberals, they want to remove the history, factual history of America. They want to destroy the culture, the fabric of America. So you hear things like this coming out of the liberals. When was America ever great, John? Well, if you tear down all the statues and the history, you can't answer that question because there's no history to talk about because you removed it all.
Raynard, let's get to the indictment yesterday of the police officer in Atlanta, and I got Atlanta police officers walking out. There's one narrative that is saying, hey, the guy was running away, got shot in the back, that's murder. There's another narrative that said, well, no, he resisted arrest, took the cop's stun gun, cop heard a shot, a blast, he's defending himself. But then also you got a third group that's saying if he was not indicted, Atlanta would have burned down. Help us make sense of this.
What I find interesting, John, with that case, number one, this guy is not the case that you want to build a moral example out of, because unlike Minnesota, where everybody universally agreed it was wrong what happened to George Floyd there in Minneapolis, this is a totally different case. He fought two officers, so obviously he's a pretty strong guy, took the taser, ran, turned around, pointed the gun. Here's what no one's talking about, John. Remember 2 weeks ago, 2 Atlanta policemen got fired who were black because they took out a taser and busted the window of 2 black college students who were sitting in front of CNN. They tased them. The the mayor fired the police, and the district attorney, the same one who made the ruling yesterday, said firing the taser into the car was a deadly weapon. So if it's a deadly weapon in that situation, should it be a deadly weapon with Rayful, I think his name was? It should be a deadly weapon then. So if it was a deadly weapon and the police responded with lethal force, then he would be justified. And I think this court case may go in favor of the policeman based on that.
What do you think of so many Atlanta police officers now not showing up for work?
Oh, this is a blowout. There's no question in my mind, John. And I guess I understand because, see, I've been on the receiving side of some bad police, nothing where, I got beat up horribly and all that stuff. But I understand, and we're getting to the point. Remember after the Laquan McDonald trial in Chicago where the white guy shot the McDonald and he was running away from the police, and the police said, we're not going to respond to calls, and the crime rate shot up in Chicago. That's what's going to happen in Atlanta, and I understand. We got to find a balance, John, between our default position always supporting the police and our default position in the black community always supporting the alleged victim. Somewhere in the middle, there's a reasoned space where we can all coalesce and get along. We have not found that yet, but Atlanta is in for a long, hot summer.
Before all this happened, before George Floyd, before COVID, a lot of us thought that President Trump in 2020 could get up to 15% of the black vote. Now that doesn't seem within reach. He got 8% in 2020. Between now and November, how does the president get that number up? Raynard Jackson.
Well, as I told the president last week when I met with him, if he focuses on black entrepreneurs, school choice vouchers, and the whole kind of cultural, moral values issues, those 3 things in the black community. But he's got to start now and have credible black surrogates, John, like myself, Herman Cain, Jennifer Carroll, Bob Woodson. And we need to be out there engaging in the marketplace of ideas and challenging radical liberals like the Roland Martins, the Joy Reid, the Don Lemon. We need to do that every day because, John, I'm telling you, the message is not a problem from the conservative side. We just need to go into the black community and invite them to be a part of the team. That's the only thing we need to do.
How do you fan out and do that? And then what would be the message, Raynard Jackson?
Well, number one, the message is the president's tax cut in 2017. Do you realize it had a phenomenal impact on small and minority businesses, positive? What this president has done for HBCUs, 4 HBCUs owed $352 million after Katrina. They took out a loan to get them through that Katrina period in 2005. They went to Obama and asked the president then to forgive them. He refused to. President Trump said, I'll wipe out the debt. So he wiped out $352 million in debt for 4 HBCUs. And this whole notion of granting amnesty to illegals, that will detrimentally be very unfavorable to the black, low, and unskilled population in the labor force. And so issues like that, John, resonates with the black community. And we just need to have our surrogates across the country taking that message into the black community. And it's still enough time for us to move from 8% of the vote to 15% to 20%. And if we get those numbers, John, as you well know, it is impossible for the Democrats to win. As I tell a lot of journalists, the Democrats can't win, but Trump can lose, because what the Democrats are offering, John, is just a non-starter. So we conservatives just need to take our message into the black community, and I think we'll get rewarded for it.
When Joe Biden said, if you ain't voting for me, you ain't black, how did you react to that, Maynard Jackson?
Oh, no, well, John, I'm totally offended by that because, again, but Biden is being who Biden is, and he's showing us as his true beliefs and how he views the black community. How dare he be the arbiter of who's black and who's not? And isn't it amazing, John, that Biden has not offered anything by way of policy that will address issues that are a major concern to the black community, like the crime going on in Chicago, Baltimore, Ferguson, New York, L.A., San Francisco, Oakland. No policy prescription. He has not made any address for the minority small business community. What does that administration look like under Biden? How much taxes are you going to raise on the small business community where you're going to drive them out of business? So he has no message for the black community, John, and that's why if President Trump gets some credible surrogates out there on the road, we can penetrate the black community and bring enough votes over to get him reelected.
I think you nailed it. We're with Raynard Jackson. He's President CEO of Raynard Jackson and Associates, government PR firm. He's in D.C., talks to the president. Raynard, are you still doing your 1 hour podcast radio show?
No, I gave it up about 2 years ago because it was just taking up so much time. But I may start doing again because I'm getting so much interest and so many phone calls of people wanting to hear what my views are on a lot of topical issues going on today, John. So I may start that up, and then I'll have you on as a guest on my show.
Well, let's see. What you should think about, we should talk about, is having the live Raynard Jackson show on the John Fredericks Radio Network.
Oh, wow.
1 to 2 p.m. Monday to Friday. Think about
John,
that, Raynard.
Oh, no, I'm calling you on that, John. That's phenomenal. Phenomenal. Let's talk about it.
I think we need another voice in the African American community beyond those that are out there now. One that can have a different message, connect a little bit differently, take calls live. That's the one thing about live is you get to take calls and it's real. It's a lot of work, but we're expanding. I'm looking for new voices. I think you'd be an excellent one. And we're based in Richmond. We could probably do a remote thing. We could figure that out. It's got to be daily. It's got to be live. But there's a lot going on here, and so you're 90 miles outside of Washington. You'd have to do it there wherever you are, but those details could get worked out. I think it would be an asset to our listeners.
Thank you, John. Yeah, I will follow up with you on that, but I think that sounds very appealing, especially with a lot of the issues going on today, John. We conservatives have got to stop ceding the marketplace of ideas to the radical liberals like the Joy Reid, the Roland Martin, Don Lemon, the Al Sharpton, the Jesse Jackson, because I'm telling you, John, there's an audience that wants to hear our conversation that we're having this morning, and we have to take it to them. Like the Doobie Brothers said, John, you look too young to know about this, but let's take it to the street.
Raynard Jackson, call me after the show. Thanks for being with us. John Fredericks Radio Network.